welcome back to PHL Cup. I'm your host Manny, and today we have a special episode. We are looking back at some of the best coaching and advice that we have been given on this podcast. Just before we start, I want to give a massive shout out to our sponsors, Team Builder and Apex Cool Labs. For more information on who they are and what they do, click the links in the description. We kick things off with Coach Ron McKeefery, my personal mentor and someone that has helped me throughout this industry. He is also a big part of why this podcast started, so I thought only fitting. During this clip, we discuss the importance of developing athletes' confidence by just making them uncomfortable enough to reach that next step in their career.
And then we bring our young coaches in to work with the other 50% of the team or the other 40% of the team. And that it's great because those athletes, they don't know any different. They're coming up from high schools where maybe there was one coach on the floor, for everybody. And now they got one coach for four athletes, and so you guys are kind of growing together, and so you're going to make mistakes, but you're also able to be kind of put into an authoritative position. And by the time you're done, by the end of those 6 weeks, then you might be working with some of our star players just because it's the way it falls into things. And but that first couple of weeks, you're drinking water through a fire hose, and it's coming at you really, really fast. And that's the part that people don't realize. People don't realize that they go through, they get their degree, they get their certification. They come out of university and they think that where's my job? I have all the credentials. And there's a big difference between being credentialed and being qualified. Being qualified is having worked in this environment and understand all the things that go into it beyond just the sets and reps and programming and all that. And it's a very small part of the job. Right in the workout's a very small part of the job. And getting them to buy into it, believe in you as a coach, trust the process, and you've been you were a part of it. You saw, things like extra lifts and special workouts, and those things don't just happen. Guys don't just show up because you ask them to, right? You got to create the environment to where they want to be there. And when you got that kind of involvement with your athletes, like we do here, then good things happen. And I think it's being in that environment, seeing it. That's the only true way for you to be qualified to be able to get those types of jobs. And unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people that just throw their hands up and they say, "Where's my job?" And then they get frustrated. And there's so much more into it than that.
Next up, we have Coach Mike Boyle. In this clip, we discuss the importance of being competent in all lifts and how sports science is shaping the scope of this industry.
Yeah, and like I said, I think you should be, even if you might say, "Hey, I'm never going to use power cleans. I'm never going to use back squats. I'm never going to do a jerk." You should be competent in all of those exercises. But it's interesting. We did this in a staff meeting not too long ago because we have coaches that work for us who said, "I really can't teach a back squat because we never teach it." And we spent the staff meeting on teaching back squat. And I thought, they're right. This is, if they were to go anyplace else, someone would expect them to be able to do that. And we have coaches who've never done it. They've taught all variety of split squats and all these things that they've taught, but they've never taught the basics of the back squat. So, yeah, I just think that competence, regardless of weight, is important. So I don't care. We have 15-pound bars, we have 25-pound bars, we have 35-pound bars for just that reason, because I want people to be able to just be proficient demonstrating the lifts. I don't really care about the amount of weight they're moving. I think there's way too much science right now. Sorry, I'm moving because I need to get my charger too, because my computer is telling me that it's going to expire. But I think we've gone way too far on the science side lately, which I don't like. I'm not a fan. When I look at this, I think there's way too much force plate data and all this other stuff, and way too little from a competency standpoint. And so I think we've just got to be careful with the direction that we go. As I said, I think when we look at this and say to ourselves, okay, what do I want people to be able to do? Uh, Again, I don't want somebody who can't skip but knows how to use a force plate. Right? That's because I would look at that and think that is absolutely very clearly the cart far before the horse. So I think we're in the nerdification of strength and conditioning right now, where everybody is in love with the data and VBT devices. Again, I don't think you need VBT. We're just beginning to play with VBT, and I'm starting to think that it has a place. For a while, I didn't think that it has a place. For a while, I thought I don't know if it really matters. I would say I've shifted my thought process on that a little bit, but I would also say that the average beginner needs to be much more focused on controlling the bar than they are on accelerating the bar. So I think there will come a time where I might look at you and say, okay, Manny, now we're going to worry about how fast you can move the bar, particularly in non-Olympic lifts, like in a non explosive lift, because when you start trying to get people to move fast, when you're trying to get them to move slow, it's a problem. But I do believe when you've got stronger athletes, there is value in gamifying intent. And we've been playing around with that exact process, kind of the gamifying of intent with, I would say, an intermediate to advanced lifter, and looking and saying, all right, now I'm going to look at it and we're going to switch the metric. We might say, okay, the load is going to remain the same, but the guy who moves that load the fastest is the person that we're going to recognize now, as a for instance. So we did that. We've been playing around that with trap bar deadlift, and we actually have been back squatting because we have a bunch of college kids who have to back squat in college. So if they have to back squat in college, then we back squat, because I want them to be prepared for what their strength coach is going to make them do, even though it may not be what I'm going to make them do. But what we've been playing with now is we have a Vitruve unit, which is a nice little unit, and we're just focusing on, okay, who's gonna give us the highest meters per second, as opposed to who's gonna lift the most weight. And I do think there's some value in that, but I think we just have to be careful that we don't forget about the basic technical aspects, that we don't forget about the interpersonal aspects in our pursuit of data. I had one Major League Baseball strength coach tell me that he said, I have trouble getting my job done because I have to do weekly force plate testing on all of our players. And I think, why would you need weekly force plate testing? And why would you be doing weekly force plate testing on all of your players if it was legitimately detracting from training time? So I'm not getting my workouts done because I'm so busy getting the testing done that the front office wants to see. And then I would look at it and say, who in the front office has any idea what any of this data actually means? And is anyone in the front office actually looking at the data? And so that's kind of the direction. And then sometimes the data is not understandable to the player. That's another big drawback. For instance, our American players are used to vertical jumps not done on a force plate. Now people say our force plate's more accurate. I get it. It's like DEXA scans are more accurate too for body fat, but our athletes are used to skin folds. So they're used to their body fat being 10%. When you do a DEXA scan and you tell them they're 18 or 19, they don't like that. They're pissed off. And they think this shit doesn't work. It's broken. It's much the same thing with the force plate. You've got guys, I vertical jump 36 inches. I get on the force plate, I do 24. And then somebody looks and the same thing. This thing's stupid. Why? It doesn't even work. My vertical jump didn't go down a foot. And then you're trying to explain to them the physics behind what's actually happening, and they're not understanding. They're just mad at you. So I think we have to really be careful about how we place new technologies into the system, and then how we expose our athletes to those new technologies in a way that makes it palatable for them. And we've just done a shit job, an absolute shit job of that in the last decade.
Next up, we have Dane Miller. Dane Miller discusses the importance of introducing the Olympic weightlifts and why we as coaches should not be scared to introduce lifting, even if we can't do them ourselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think for me, the way I would take that is, I mean, I would say, we talk about foundational exercises, right? And I would say, you want to know why most people don't do front squats? It's not because they can't rack the bar. It's not. It's because they know they could do a zombie squat. They could do a cross arm front squat. You could put straps on the bar. You could even sit there with a safety squat bar on the front. The reason why you don't do a front squat is because you're a freaking baby. Like, it's really, really hard. Like, you've got a weight basically choking you out. And then on top of that, what we do is we push heavy doubles to heavy sets of 5, right? Like, I have a girl who's just turned 13 now, and I've been telling the whole world about her, how she's an absolute freak. And last night I said, look, I want you to clean and jerk 100 kilos by December. So she's in 7th grade, and I say, okay, I want you to clean and jerk 100 kilos. So we need you to front squat a red, a yellow, and a little red for a set of 5. And when you do that, you're going to be able to clean and jerk it. And she's looking at me and she's like, so what are we doing? She knew we had to front squat. This is yesterday. I was like, so we're going to do a red, a green, a little red. We're going to do 90 kilos. And so we did a set of 5. And she's like, yeah, that was pretty hard. I was like, okay, let's do another set of 5. So she racks it on her 5th rep. Was like, she maybe had one more rep after it. She racks it. I was like, okay, one more set. She's like, I've got to do 3 sets of 5. And that's the whole thing, is like, dude, you learn how, when you're 13 years old, how to do 3 sets of 5 front squatting and 90 kilos, and you're a female. Guess what? That's part of the culture. That's part of, like, you're going to the dark side, and you're learning at a very young age that it's okay to let go and to have the stress and the fear to, like, go away. And the more you do that and the more you practice that mentally, then you get into a serious competition when you're 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, and you've been tested, you've been through it, you've been handled, like, you've handled the pressure already. You've been dreaming of those moments in your training. And that's where I think a lot of people want to get away from doing front squats or a heavy clean or learning how to snatch, or, just because it's hard to learn. It's the craziest part about this. Like, let's just put all this away and say, let's say the number one excuse is always, it's hard to teach kids, like, in a big group setting. Nobody actually dissects that statement and says, we're strength coaches. The whole goal of what we do is to get people in the weight room to do hard things, because when they do a hard task, their body has to adapt. And when their body adapts, they get better. That's literally all we do. That's like the simplest way to put what a strength coach is. Do hard tasks, get better. Like, there's no other way to put it. And you're a strength coach, and you're telling me you don't want to teach this lift because it's hard to teach it to a big group? Dude, you're an idiot. Like, really? You're literally like the total opposite of what our profession is. And it's, to me, it's like, I mean, that's just the first step to identifying why people don't use them. But it's an amusing point, because the same guys that'll post David Goggins quotes and Jocko Willing quotes are the same dudes who are saying, I don't want to use weightlifting movements because it's too hard to teach a big group. Like, okay, I don't know how that makes sense, but whatever however you can justify being lazy is fine.
We then bring it back across the pond to my side and we talk to Paul Comfort. Paul Comfort discusses the importance of conditioning and how that improves all aspects of strength and conditioning.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an over obsession with recovery, and let's back off so that they can recover. But actually, what we know from the limited research which is out there If you're stronger, you recover faster. And if your aerobic fitness is higher, you recover faster. So you don't end up going into as big a hole during whatever your competition is. So having people fitter, faster, stronger at the start works and works really well. There's some really interesting research which shows that actually the intensities and that people are working at sometimes in games isn't as hard as we think they are. And again, a lot of that data is presented in terms of absolutes rather than relative. So if you and I go out and play a game of football and we cover exactly the same distance, do the same amount of high speed running, well, if you're fitter and faster and stronger than me, it was submaximal for you. It could have just written me off for the next 48 hours. So we need to consider that in terms of that relative level. But we also need to make sure that if we're backing off in, trying to manage load too frequently by decreasing load, and it's load management, it's not decrease load. And as you said, sometimes you need to be topping people up. They need to do more. But it's also identifying, well, more of what? What is the key stimulus that they need? How do they normally play? And that's really interesting when you look across positional groups or individual positions, because you can see two people that play the same position in a football or a rugby team, but actually their load and their accelerations, decelerations, total distance, high speed running, completely different profiles. So we've got to individualize it where possible. Now, at the elite levels, you've got the staff and you've got the technology to do that. Once you drop below that, then what do you do? Or take it to the other extreme, you're working with a national team. And I've got one of my previous PhD students and a couple of existing PhD students work with some national squads. And you then have a look at the data that they're getting. And a lot of the clubs are worried about the volume of training that they'll do when they're, in a tournament structure. But what they don't do is they don't increase the volume of training before their athletes go and play with a national squad. That would be the best way to protect them. But what some of them do is go, well, back off so they're recovered. Well, actually, then you suddenly get a massive spike in load when they go into that tournament structure. And then the other thing they'll do is when they go back to their team sometimes is we need to rest them. You've worked them too hard. We've got to rest them. Well, actually, if their workload went up by 25, 30%, them going to play for their domestic team, their home team that's fine. That's brilliant. You've suddenly had a decrease in load of 25, 30% compared to what they had with the national team. So you don't need to rest them because you'll naturally have a deload or a taper effect because they just don't work as hard at that level. Because if you're in the national squad, you're the best of the best, hopefully. And the work rates go up, whether it's men's, women's teams, etc. So it is about managing load and not a case of reducing load. And we've got to think about when's the best time to progressively increase it to prepare people. There are times when you have to go, no, we need to recover. If you are in that tournament structure with a national team and it's a game every 3 days, in between, you haven't got much time to do a lot of training because you have to get them fully recovered because they have to try and win. Because if not, they're knocked out of the tournament and then everyone's in trouble. So there's definitely an over-reliance on let's back off. They've worked really hard. Should we do this type of training with them? But going back to the earlier point, if you've pushed them and worked them hard enough outside of that competitive season and you still have a sufficient load in season, well, it shouldn't be too difficult to give them, at that point, sort of the minimum dose to maintain. And I avoided using the term minimum effective dose because minimum effective to achieve what? Is it maintenance? Is it an increase? Is it, so the minimum that they need to do to maintain that level of performance for a period of time. Because otherwise what we see sometimes is people keep backing off of that with the load management. And actually the games then become more fatiguing because you're detraining. So you're working at a higher relative percentage. And by the end of the season, half of the squad are less fit than they were at the end of pre-season. Well, they should be fitter by that point, especially if you go into a playoff situation.
Next up, we have Joey G, and we discussed the importance of preparation for practice, meaning that in order to have a successful practice, we need to have the fundamentals to be able to undergo all the loads that come from it.
Yeah, to me, it's all about getting them prepared for the demands of practice. Like how do I create reserves, right? Everyone's familiar nowadays, most everyone with speed reserve. I take that same principle to every single strength, right? So elastic strength, peak force, rate of force. Like, how do we create reserves? Eccentric strength. How do we create these reserves that are not only higher, okay, but like that are significantly higher than what are the demands of a daily practice going to be, right? Because if they can withstand that, so if my guys are used to running, 20,000 yards in a week, okay, when we go to the first week of camp and they're running 14,000 yards, that's 6,000 yards less than what their company or what they're expected or used to running. So we're going to be able to recover better. We're going to be able to mitigate a lot of soft tissue injuries because their workload that they're accustomed to is way higher. The same goes in any respect of any position, right? And football is unique because it's a game of many games. Every position is different. I don't care what anybody says. Every position is different, right? And now the key and the art of it is figuring out what's important to each one of those positions and over preparing them for what's going to happen in a practice. And when you do that, you dramatically decrease injuries. You mitigate a lot of injuries. You can't stop all injuries, right? Like there's anyone that says oh yeah, we stop injuries is don't listen to them. Okay, yeah, because they're full of shit. Because you're gonna get one or two hamstrings. I don't care how good you are at what you do, or how much speed work you like. It's gonna happen. You're gonna get some kind of contact injury, right? It's gonna happen, right? Like I don't care how prepared you are. Like when someone runs up and falls into the back of your leg, what are you gonna do? Like you can't prevent that. So again, like, but at the same time, you can over prepare them for the repetitiveness. You can over prepare them for the strengths necessary to be good at their position. So like we formulate and we look at, all right, like in those support days, which are going to be those low days, like how can we build up the robustness and the work capacity of those athletes that's going to, be higher than the demands of a practice. When you have that, you feel really good about the training process and the athlete's preparedness going into those situations. And again, now what the beauty of it is like some people look at the coaches increase participation in the off season, the sport coaches participation in the off season as a bad thing. And I look at it as like that's the most specific thing they're gonna do. Like, and I tell our coaches, I'm like, this is my coach is awesome. Like, I'm able to plan out practices, volumes, amount of live plays, when we're in shells, when we're in helmets, all those different things, because he trusts me that much in the planning process. But it's I could go up to our linebacker coach and be like, hey man, like those guys need about 1,000 more yards of work in that middle zone, like between 12 and 15 miles an hour. Find a way to get it done, coach. And he'll be like, all right, cool. We need to do pursuit drill. Awesome. We need to do more tracking drills. Awesome. And that's where the collaboration side of it. And to me, I think that's where like I've seen the biggest benefit, increasing buy-in from the position coach into your program, and then increasing just the harmony and the camaraderie of the entire staff. And it feels as one to the athlete now because you're increasing the communication process and you guys are collaborative. Now you're working together to get the outcome you want. It's not my time and their time, it's our time, and we're progressing it. And then, I mean, what football player doesn't want to work football? Like, and the like no one signs up for to be a Division I football player and goes, yeah, I really want to run hundreds and 110s. Like no one says that, but a kid's gonna be like, man, I'll do 7-on-7 all day. I'll do 1-on-1s all day. I'll do indie all day. Like I'll work on my craft all day. Well, when you have the foundation work capacity to be that specific, to go general to specific, and then you add the position coach into it in the process of that, and you really streamline that continuum, like you get a really, really good training adaptation out of it. You can increase all the performance side of it as well as get them to endure what a practice is going to be and have them be better at their sport. And that's kind of where I've been at. That's kind of where my mind frame's been as far as getting them there.
We then have a conversation with Bert Sorin, and we have his interpretation of Shy Boys Don't Get Sweets. This one was a special one for me because that's my saying, and he has a similar one which he discusses in this next clip.
I'm writing it down right now. That's great. Yeah, and I guess I would call that what I call the open door theory. Most people I see, they walk down the hallway of life looking at their phone or they're maybe looking at that far off plan and they're looking at that door and they don't realize all the open doors or cracked doors that they're walking past. And they're the same people that go,
dude, you get to do so many cool things. You get to blah, 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 blah. Almost all of it has come from a door that was opened for me or cracked open that I had decided to explore by my own volition, or someone was like, hey, would you like to come out for the track team, or would you like to come lift with me, or would you like to? And I said yes. And I walked through the open door, and then maybe there's a different hallway with other open doors. And the people I've noticed that always are saying, you get to do so much cool stuff, nothing cool ever happens to me. They're always the people that are never walking through open doors. They're the shy boys that are never getting the suites, and they wonder why they're never getting the suites. And I also say, what open doors did you walk through this year? Well, I mean, I was busy, I had to do this. I was all right. So you were focused on some far off plan that will never actually happen. It never actually happened, and you missed all these opportunities. And I've had people say, well, I'm gonna come to Summer Strong one year. It ain't that hard. It's not like going to the moon, right? Like, then buy the ticket and get your ass in the car and start driving, and by the time it's a bad idea, you'll be halfway there. It ain't that hard. And so, but I've noticed that people in my life that are hyper successful, that have these amazing lives, they walk through open doors or even cracked doors. They walk through them constantly. And the people that are doing the same dumb shit 25 years later and still pissed off their life isn't going anywhere, they don't do anything different. They're shy boys, like you said. It's the same mantra. It's the same mantra. I love it. I'm gonna write up that up on my board. It's great.
Next up, we sit down with Sean Swetnam, coach at the UCLA, and we are talking about the importance of having no excuses for performance, whether that's testing, practice, and game.
Yeah, I mean, one of the core principles for our strength standards is no excuses. Absolutely zero excuses, right? And like, hey, I'm a couple guys on the jump mat yesterday after a hard practice, or sorry, not jump mat, the vortex rather, doing a drop jump. Hey, my back's a little bit sore. A guy got helmet ran into my ribs, yada yada. I'm like, cool. Go ahead and weigh in on the four stack. We're gonna go ahead and do a drop jump anyway, right? It's like some of that stuff you kind of have to like the. Although these are young men, and although they are of age to be adults, they are young, impressionable guys, right? And what happens, and this is one of the best things I learned from Corey Miller this year and last year as well, is the athletes that you come in contact with will start to carry the traits of the strength coaches. So if you're a little more aloof or passe, or if you're a little bit of like, kind of off, or you have low energy, or you're more laissez-faire with how they do things or how they complete reps, and you're not on them, you'll start to see a little bit of that come up. If you're detail oriented, you're on them, you have high energy, you're having a good time, you're executing everything, you're fluid and dynamic. The guys are a lot more likely to have more fun, but also get a lot out of it as well. That's positive for their performance. So if we're trying to enhance their performance, we want them to be, mean and get after it as well, and have the ability to strain and have the ability to try and beat the other guy, beat the shit out of their brains, the guy next to them in a race, or lift more than them. But as soon as they're done with that, they get into the locker room and they can talk a little bit, and they're still guys, and they're going to go to class, and they're going to still have fun with each other because they're family, right? So it's just brothers fighting over and over again. We encourage competition, obviously, and we encourage toughness, but they need to see that out of us as well. When they're feeling down and they want to cut things a little bit short, or they want to find an avenue of easy because they're fatigued and tired, and we've purposely driven them there, and we're trying to agitate them a little bit, and we're trying to build some resoluteness, or we're trying to build some just overall uncanny like grit, like you mentioned. We want to make sure that, hey man, like I'm here to help, although I'm on you, and I'm and I'm poking at you and everything. It's because we need you to be tougher, and you're already tough as it is, and you wouldn't be here if you weren't. But do you think the guy across the field from you in red or whatever else color, if we're Ohio State, the pending national championships on November 15th, or we're at USC at the end of the year, or in-town rivals, you think they're going to give a shit about, how tired you are right now, or how fatigued you are, or, the shoes you're wearing, or not the colors you like? Nobody really cares. There's no excuses. It's performance over preference, So that's another one of our, out of our 10 tenets, that's another one, which is my favorite. It's performance over preference. And then includes, but it's not limited to, food, as well as, how they're eating. Like what some guys don't like water. Guess what? You will be drinking, multiple ounces of water today, and you're going to have to. Right. That this is the way.
Next up, we have Coach AJ Middleton. Again, another mentor of mine and someone who has taught me a lot, specifically taking athletes to the dark side so when they get into games and performances, they can take their opponents to the deep end.
Here we call it the deep end because it's safer for kids. So, kids. But yes. So, and the football, they use deep bars, but like Panther strength, it's like every program I'm teaching them, we go to the deep end. We're going to see if they can swim. Like, we don't care about the wins, the loss. We going to see if they can swim. So that's what I've been preaching with all the programs. So like distance wise, it's like, hey, we're gonna grab this girl or guy by their hair. We're gonna run them out of here. Then so I found out like distance wise, right? Think about team process, right? I think coaches told me 6 run, but 5 score for cross country, right? But could you imagine, right? You let the first runners probably, I think, they just off they go. They're supposed to run, and the lowest score wins, right? But could you imagine your 4 other runners take off? Those girls score, but then you got your 6 that's like, hey, I'm stronger than more of them. I'm going to take their spots so we can have a lower number because they got to get a higher number if I finish before them. So like that, within that concept that's how I for cross country, how I talked in of like, hey, everyone here in your mind, you think you can score. If you can't score, you take points from somebody. So that for distance wise in volleyball, it's like the deep end is like playing above the net. So it doesn't matter. Your spike in the first game is the same spike in the 5th game if we have to. But through process wise, we only need 3. We need 3. So, and then soccer wise, it's just like early and often. Score first, win first. Because you score off the rip, kid mentality, just keep scoring. Energy starts to go down before you know it, it's 3-0. And then you let your other teammates play. And then deep water, like deep end for football. They go deep. I didn't know. I mean, I knew it was deep water. I was like, oh, I'll use the same concept, deep end, deep water. But the deep end is like, it's like when it's the same force in the first, the same detail. Doesn't matter the score. Doesn't matter the situation. We're going to be always in every game. And we're in those that see the podcast and watch it, we're in the Metro. Probably we're the hardest conference in the state. I don't care. Come see us. But basketball, football, all of them. So we at Prep, we do what we need to do, and like we feel like our edge is taking people out and seeing if they can swim. That's our edge. So that's to train all of them. I think it's pretty big because at UW I saw how important it was. Like the first year we were there was like, and I'll reference Graham. Like when we made a bowl game that first year, like they made the Graham post and everybody was all happy. Like no one even remembers the 6th game last season. There was one goal. It was like, okay, what's next? What's next? What are we doing? So that was a testament to like the mentality and those kids, because those are tough kids. So, oh man, those are not kids. I mean, we saw some numbers in that weight room. Those guys are far from kids. But yeah, no, that was it.
We then talked to another legend, Thomas Newman, and we discussed the myths of periodization. It's fine to have a baseline, but is it really what happens in the field? When different aspects come into play, what happens to your periodization?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And again, anybody that wants to argue with us, man, just go to your local hospital and find out what block of medical care they're giving. And the best way to think about it, and again, whether it's coaches I'm with or whether it's the, young interns, go to a hospital and just see what comes through the door. because that's the highest level. That's the highest level. Is it? And again, diagnostic tools are my eyes. It's my conversations. Now, I'm lucky. I can throw you on a qualysis. I can throw you on a force plate. I can go talk to a research expert at Harvard. I can do a lot, and that's why it's the research center. On the private side, I can make a phone call, find a doctor here, there, right? But it's still the whole thing is all you know is what's in your toolbox as a practitioner. Someone's in front of you. They need to train today. Can you pick the most appropriate? And that's where flexible nonlinear, and I think we've talked about this, there's a reason why it's 20 to 30% increases in performance compared to traditional blocks, is because it takes into account, yes, on this mesocycle, we need power. Yes, in this mesocycle, we have these three things. So I'm going to ask, what's my structural thing? What's my electrical thing? What's my biochemical thing? Three things. And we can't be perfect at everything. These are the three areas in the composite that we need to develop. Okay, you came in Monday. You were hungover. Can't do my strength day. Roger that. Coming in Tuesday. Okay, what do I got? Now, collectively, what does that week look like? What did I do that week towards those three goals? And, not uncommon at Yale, we'd walk up to our iPads, team builders loaded. We would have 27, 26 workouts in the toolbox, ready to go. You are a defensive lineman. You just got called up. Normally Thursday's your power day, but now you're playing on Saturday. We have to pivot and move. What do we do? And then we would, at the end of the season, make a pie chart, and you would see across 120 guys, same football team, same season, not a single one of the pie charts look the same. And that's kind of when we talk about the individualization and periodization, can be in the form of a block. But when I talk with students, it's what is the diagnostic tool you're using that day in the programs you have right now to make the best training plan for the individual in front of you. And understanding that, again, three people come in, three different plans, three different approaches. But the periodization, it's a coordinated effort, because it also can't be random. Because the novice athlete, the novice athlete can recover within 24 hours. So can a novice athlete squat? So you have 14, 15-year-old, can they squat? Yeah, they squat every day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because they're doing the bar, 20 kilos, 23 kilos, 26, whatever. They start building it up. Now, at an intermediate level, it's what was the load on the week. So now, can you squat every day? Probably not, right? Maybe you change up the angle, front squat, back squat, transformer, kabuki, flywheel, whatever, figure it out. And then we look at that week. And then the advanced athlete is, what did we do in the month? And there's a book that Greg Half just put out that's incredible, talking about periodization, where we all know that the Cellier principle, right? The gas principle, we apply a stimulus, it goes down, come up. Well, I love the visual that he has in his model, where it's not one line, it's like 4 or 5 lines. And I would argue that there's probably even more. So what's the psychological line? What's the biochemical line? What's the strength line? What's the mobility line? What's the nutrition? How deep do you want to go? And then, as we are here today, what is the thing that we can make the biggest change on? And that's the way I try to coach coaches on, to realize that there's so many levels to the game that, again, just being complacent with, a 3-week block. Well, in 4 weeks, I'm going to add volume. Okay. What's their nutrition like? Well, that's not my department. Well, do you have a DEXA plan scanned? No. Well, we don't have, that's not, okay. So how are so volume is not a training outcome, in the sense that that's what if I get to blank volume, I know my sport. We use volume as a proxy for either work capacity, training density, or metabolic, conditioning. But in all phases, you can measure that. So if you don't have a tool in place and you're just saying volume for volume, you get a lot of trash reps. You're kind of in the dead zone. So that's where, again, you're going to write bad plans. Boyd used to say this all the time. Just write them once, please. Just write them once. Don't just keep rehashing the wheel, that you're programmed with a capital P. If they had been more committed, if they had nutrition. No, that's on you. Sometimes you get an athlete where they can only do 3x5 hugs because psychologically they're not committed to the process. But you just saying, yep, we're going to throw in a giant metabolic complex. We're going to get them mentally right. No, you're not. You're going to break down and have more issues. So again, being open to that and asking from the team, what do they see from their perspective is super important.
Lastly, we sat down with Coach Ray Zingler, someone that I've been watching for a while, so it was awesome to sit down and agree upon the fact that not all athletes have to give you 110% all the time if they are not able to do so. It's teaching them that that is also acceptable for them.
For sure, for sure. And to your point, it's like humans, we're emotional beings, right? So it's having some of these like robotic ways of thinking, and thinking that, oh, they missed a weight. oh, whatever, it's no big. You have to take the time to get in. You and I know it's no big deal. Like, it's okay. It's not going to affect their performance in their sport negatively. But if that girl goes home with a sour attitude and she's upset with herself, and now that negatively influences her self image, and now when she's got a negative self image of herself, and then she goes to practice that night, you can't just turn off that emotional switch, right? So all of a sudden, a missed deadlift that you and I didn't think about for 2 seconds, she let that fester for 2 hours, and then now that impacted her performance negatively on the field. Or can you take that 5 minutes? Can you explain what's going on and maybe relate to her? Hey, you had a great deadlift last week. You just said you were at your friend's house last night. Y'all were up till 2 o'clock in the morning. Your nutrition wasn't on point. Now that's how you can take a negative and turn that into a positive. It doesn't mean you're going to win every single time, but you have to look to be able to put value somewhere, and helping them resonate with that helps them, because now the next time they miss, they can go through the checklist of what potentially led them to miss, and some. Right. Oh, absolutely. And something that I've learned to do is I always train off of like training maxes. For example, if I know somebody can squat 405, I'm going to set their training max at 375. So that way I build in some leeway to where there's a 30-pound window, and there's ways to do it with velocity based training and all that. A lot of it too with my experienced athletes, we train totally off of feel. So what I'll say, instead of following a percentage scheme, hey guys, we're going to work up to a quality set of 5 today or a quality set of 3. And I keep the metrics in the background. Like, I know what weight should be on the bar for that set of 3. And without even giving them numbers, because I'm working with competitive kids that want to be there, that want to improve. This isn't just some like slap ass weight training class where they're trying to be lazy. It's not that. And about 99% of the time, those kids, when I just give them the freedom to kind of put their own weights on, they're within 5% of what I would have programmed them to put anyway, but they've taken the emotional pressure off to where, hey, maybe you came in, you're feeling a little sore, not great. You go through the warm up, you do your first warm up set, and then by that third set, they're damn near where they would have been. Or if I were to come to them and said, you got to do this your first set, this your second set, this your third set, they're looking at the number on their second set and they're already saying, I know I'm not going to get it today. I don't feel right. I'm a little bit tired, where you just let them go. And guess what? If they missed by 10 pounds, who the fuck cares, right? That isn't going to have any implication on softball performance, So that's the fun side of trying to find out, they want to know, they want to compete. They're not dumb. They know how to do the math of what's on the bar, but it's positioning it in a way that converts it. You hear of like backyard sports where you have highly competitive sport, and then you got the kids playing street ball. Well, the performance in street ball is always pretty damn good because they're so loose and they're just having fun. I try to create that same environment in the weight room. Now, we still have structure and they still know what exercises they need to be doing and this, that, and the other. But I want them coming in, feeling loose. The music's on. Let's just have some fun. And then all of a sudden they end up hitting 90% of the time. Or what I'll do is I'll let them, let's just say I wanted their weight to be 405 for a squat for a set of 2. And they ended up going 365 because that's what they felt that day, that was my last one. I see them do their first rep and they smoke it. I say, okay, go get 4. All right, now let's do the math. Let's go 405 times 2 or 365 times 4. The tonnage is actually higher than what they would have done with the 405 times 2. And we got the same or similar training response with going less load, and they were only supposed to do 2 reps at 365. They doubled their output. That's a huge win for them mentally, right? Versus if I put 405 on the bar, they may have suffered through it or whatever, or maybe only got 1 of the 2 reps. And even if they accomplished it, they feel like leaving like I did less, whereby lightening it up and going 365 for more, I did more work and I still got the same or similar training effect. And now they leave and they feel like they won. And that is the key. I always tell my coaches at the gym, win the day. Whatever her win looks like today, it might be different than yesterday's. If they miss one of her deadlifts, really push her on the weighted carries at the end. Let her challenge herself and feel gritty. And, she's got to sandbag and she fucking fought, and slam that down. And then when she leaves, she's not going to remember that deadlift. She's going to remember I left feeling accomplished. And if you can do that with kids enough days in a row, good things happen, man. Good things happen.
Thank you all so much for listening and watching this episode. This was personally a really cool episode to film because I have always loved the replays of old episodes and introducing new aspects to it. So this one was special for me to film and record and edit and post. So again, big shout out to our amazing sponsors, Team Builder and Apex Cool Labs. If you want to know more from them, there's a link in the description to their sites and their benefits. Peace.